Hello, my name is Edmund Robinson, and I had the honor and privilege to serve for many years as the minister of the UU Meeting House in Chatham, from which I retired in January, but I volunteered to do one of these summer services for the UU community of Eastern Massachusetts. So this is my turn, and we'll be considering what our social isolation is like. But let's start with the opening words from Kenneth Patton. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips. Let us love the world through heart and mind and body. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters. We seek to know the wistfulness of the very young and the very old, the wistfulness of people in all times of life. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, the anguish behind cruelty. All life flows into a great common life if we will only open our eyes to our companions. Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears. Let us worship with the opening of all the windows of our beings, with the full outstretching of our spirits. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body to those who have fallen in love with life. Let us worship, and let us learn to love.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may ill fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by faith made strong, these rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. The sharp that all the world grow chill shall keep you warm. Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into our shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and love in.
Let us light our chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts, and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Everything Possible by Fred Small. We have cleared off the table, put the leftovers up, washed the dishes and put them away. I have read you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. There are girls who grow up strong and bold. There are boys quiet and kind. Some dash on ahead, some linger behind, some go in their own way and time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children, some never do. You can travel all day without reaching the end of everything possible for you. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games, but seek out spirits true. If you give to your friends the best part of yourself, they will give the same back to you. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Everything Possible. Now observe a moment of silence for a great UU who lived here on Cape Cod among us and is passed on 2 weeks ago, Eugene Pickett, great president of the UUA and a great parishioner in the Chatham Church. And I'll continue with the pastoral prayer of W.E.B. Du Bois. The prayer of our souls is a petition for persistence, not for the one good deed or single thought, but deed on deed and thought on thought, until day calling unto day shall make a life worth living.
Lonely by Tess Baumberger. I know what it's like to be filled up with lonely, to carry it around in my belly all day, every day, heavy and hollow. I try to gulp it down so it doesn't show in my eyes when I meet strangers or friends. I know what it's like to be swallowed by lonely, to slide down its long neck and sit in its wet belly, until I get so used to it, I forget what it was like to be out in the world. I blink, bewildered, when lonely spits me back out into people again. I know what it's like to wallow in lonely, sniff it out like a pig and throw it cold over my back, to burrow down into it and flounder, eyes just above the ground. I know what it's like to be walled in with lonely, in a small round room with no windows, no corners to hide in, nothing to look at, except its vacant face, no sounds to listen to, but its hollow, raspy voice, nothing to smell, but lonely. You can smell it, you know. Older women in supermarkets wear it like perfume, a cloud of lonely around them, shadowed by dead husbands or lovers lost but unforgotten. Lonely is their companion too. It smells sadder somehow on older gentlemen there, buying frozen food and the occasional salad. Lonely leaves them helpless. It smells pungent and ripe in nightclubs and bars, on all those single people. It reeks of desperation. I've watched lonely steam off their bodies and mine, drifting and floating in the air. It feeds on our fears and grows and glows, a palpable aura of lonely. Some people seem to live without lonely. I watch them glide through their lives so at ease, so fulfilled, taking loving for granted. I wonder how they elude lonely, or if they really do, or if maybe they just hide it better. We all walk with lonely, some more, some less, surrounded by it, bathed in its juices, quenched in its fire. Alone can be lovely. Solitude is sweet. But lonely is too heavy, too deep, too wide. It is too over and under and through and within and without. Lonely speaks in short phrases that last a lifetime. Lonely speaks in short phrases and waits.
How to be good company to yourself. After 4 months of isolation at home, I should not be at all surprised if some of us entertain the notion that we are going stark, raving mad. Our worlds, which used to be so expansive, have now shrunk to a few square feet. We're all gradually waking up to the fact that the quarantine will not be lifted safely after a couple of weeks, as we initially thought, or even 4 months. What I want to talk to you about this morning is how we cope with the isolation. It's hard to make generalizations about this because people who are largely alone most of the time may have different mental and emotional challenges than those who have someone else, a partner or parent or child, with whom to share the experience. And those are different from people who may have a larger family unit. And those are different from people who are sharing the space with a roommate. As I talk to people about their experiences, it seems to me that about the only universal feeling is that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. People who are isolating alone envy the people who are part of a couple, and the people who are part of a couple might envy those living alone. Certainly any multi-person living arrangement gets strongly tested by being alone with your spouse 24/7 in forced social intimacy. If the living area is small, the pressure becomes larger. So some enforced aloneness is painful, and some enforced togetherness is painful. But let's distinguish two concepts, solitude and loneliness. They are two of the most common facets of our lived experience. Solitude, the state of being alone, and loneliness, the feeling of a lack of human connection. One is considered good and the other bad. But how are they related? We can be alone without being lonely, and we can be lonely in crowds or groups of families. Let's start with solitude. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, Chatham's most eminent summer resident and father of the right to privacy, in his most famous dissent said that the makers of our Constitution knew that people were not just economic beings, but had spiritual natures, and they conferred on Americans, quote, against the government, the right to be let alone, the most comprehensive of rights and the right most valued by civilized men, unquote. Solitude is the ultimate expression of the right to be let alone. I think Brandeis was expressing an idea that had been fixed in American culture for some time before, that solitude is good. Solitude is for the heroic and strong. The heroes are those who are not bound by the conventions of society. And if you are one of those people, you will find your greatest happiness in solitude. Americans have worshipped the rugged individualist, from Davy Crockett to Emerson, Thoreau to John Wayne, Rambo, and the Lone Ranger. Emerson's famous essay on self-reliance declared, "Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist." And he also said, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." But Emerson was a social butterfly compared to his protege, Thoreau. Walden can be read as a book written to glorify solitude. Thoreau wrote, "I find it wholesome to be alone the greater part of the time. To be in company, even with the best, is soon wearisome and dissipating. I love to be alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude." Do you think Thoreau would be writing as cheerfully about solitude if he was confined to quarters in that little shack on Walden Pond for weeks on end? He couldn't even FaceTime anyone. But many of us who find ourselves in isolation now are not temperamentally suited for it. Many of us are extroverts who get energy from interactions with others. For those, the sameness of the days and the cutoff from others can be exquisitely painful. The New Yorker had a cartoon recently in which four devils were in a living room absorbed in playing some sort of block stacking game on a card table, while the woman who lived there was standing behind them talking on her cell phone, and she was saying, "Yes, I'm just alone with my demons, but it turns out they're pretty good company." End quote. Demons? Our Universalist ancestors would say don't believe in literal demons. Quillen Shen, the great Universalist evangelist of the late 19th century, said this, quote, "Way back in the benighted past, man, lacking foresight to see how the discords and conflicts of nature would result in harmony, came to ascribe things he called evil to evil beings. Hence the world's belief in devils, ghosts, hobgoblins, and witches. All these are perishing. The light of science is killing them." End quote. But in the generation after Quillen Shen, the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung encouraged us to think of and engage with our shadow side. And so a thoroughly modern you might have dark thoughts that come in the middle of the night and think of them in shorthand as demons' voices. It isn't that you literally believe these are agents of a central evil power trying to win your soul for a regime of eternal torment after you die. You can just say, these are the natural counterweights to the good and loving and hopeful thoughts that I have most of the time. What we have to take seriously is that this social isolation takes a toll on our basic sense of meaning in the world. Whether we consider them demons or just the shadow side of ourselves, we have to pay some attention to them. You see, the remarkable thing about the present time is that it is no longer paranoid or crazy to think that there's something out in our communities that can kill you. We've had fear peddled at us by politicians all our lives, fear of the other, of people of color, or communists, or Muslims, or terrorists. These fears were largely phony. Now we have an adversary which is terrifyingly real, completely invisible, and an equal opportunity murderer. It is not useful to give in to panic, but it is sane to have a healthy fear of the virus and to learn as much as one can about avoiding contagion. If you didn't have moments of fear, anxiety, worry, then you might be crazy. What I'm suggesting in a nutshell is that we face these long stretches of time alone with the social skills we have learned in our lifetimes. Maybe you feel you're not particularly good at social graces, but I expect most of us got some instruction in our upbringing as to how to carry on a conversation, how to find a subject that is mutually interesting, how to jump to another subject if the first one turns in a bad direction. If you didn't get explicit instruction, you at least have had a whole lifetime of practice, and you know how to be a host or hostess and how to be a guest. So if you think about those roles and how conversations can be satisfying, you can be good company to yourself, even if the only people you have to talk to are your demons. Here are a few suggestions for those times when solitude becomes wearing. First, you are both guest and host. All the rules which apply to being a good guest and all the rules which apply to being a good host apply to you in your long periods of aloneness. The guest must realize that there are customs of the house and not cross the lines the host lays down. The host has to keep the conversation within the bounds of acceptable behavior and not let the demons troll other guests. Second, you're not required to always keep it interesting, but try not to bore yourself with the same thoughts over and over again. When you come back around again and again to the same point, put your feet together and jump off that hamster wheel. And if things get too boring, go and take a nap. Third, don't take yourself too seriously. We you-yous can be an earnest lot. But if you find yourself going into a pity party or convening a court of errors to try yourself from some action long ago, lighten up. Find an old comedy on Netflix. Fourth, take the opportunity this time provides to visit the past and appreciate where you've been and the people you've known. Reach out to old friends you haven't connected with in a while. Organize your photos into albums, real or digital. Read old letters. This has been your life, and no one can appreciate it as well as you can. Fifth, look forward as well and appreciate the present and the future. What do you want to do first when the restrictions are lifted? What is the next direction for your life? What is your life's arc bending towards? And sixth, as for your demons, take control of the conversation. This is your dinner party, and these demons and others are your guests. Don't let any guest hijack the conversation, but intervene and bring it around to something affirmative. Seventh, when you find yourself going down a rabbit hole and you can see that it's just going to lead to sadness, ask yourself, is this how I want to be spending the time I am given? It is your choice. You can get absorbed in a good book or TV show rather than descending into an abyss. Eighth, Carl Jung would advise you to embrace the shadow side of yourself. You're probably healthier if you face down these fears than if you simply refuse to think about them. In my pastoral counseling training, I learned a little mantra. Name it, claim it, tame it. The thing you're afraid to think about grows every time you run from it and becomes this monster under the bed until you're unwelcome in your own thoughts. Bring it out. Write it down. Take a hard look at it. What are you afraid of? For ninth, the ultimate fact is that each of us will die anyway, if not from this virus, from some other cause. Are you ready? Have you made your will? Have you filled out your medical forms? Have you told the people who need to be told that you love them? One of the best things you can do in life is to be considerate to your next of kin in the order in which you leave your affairs in taking leave of life. Now let me get back to those demons. So much of our unhappiness comes from comparing ourselves to some imagined ideal. Life wasn't supposed to turn out this way. I was supposed to be more successful, more beautiful, luckier. Don't spend so much energy thinking about what your life isn't that you can't appreciate what your life is. In that regard, one of the greatest UU ministers it has been my privilege to know was Forrest Church, who Lord knows was far from a perfect man or minister, but also left us too soon. In his latter years, he had plenty of time to reflect on the cancer that was killing him. And in his last book, Love and Death, he summed up his approach to life with a very simple mantra in 3 sentences. Be who you are, want what you have, do what you can. Be who you are means give up trying to be someone else, your neighbor with the big sailboat, or the person from your high school class who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or the kid who always got picked for such football ahead of you, or the 1,000 people you know who don't suffer from your obvious flaws. Here's the great truth staring you in the face. None of the people you want to be, none of those people you envy are you. Many of them might even want to be you. Only you can be you, and only you can be the best David or Sam or Beth or Mary you can be. I got a haircut a few weeks ago. I got tired of waiting for the clippers which I'd ordered through the mail, and Jacqueline and I sat out on our back deck, and she just trimmed me up with some scissors. I was so pleased with the result that I went back into the archive of old photos and put together a video clip of how I have looked since I was born. I was surprised at how much I got into the project and felt a little foolish about it. Ministers are not supposed to be narcissists. But I remember a sermon that my colleague Josh Pollack had given at the installation of David Miller Kohlmeyer in Falmouth a couple of years ago. Josh maintained that the first and most important person any of us needs to love is ourselves. It's really the basis for love of anyone else. The mantra, be who you are, really means love who you are. Not that you can't be critical of your flaws, but that you ought to find it in you to forgive yourself your little trespasses and to give yourself the unconditional love that you would hope for from your parents or from God, if that term is meaningful to you. The second part of Forrest Church's mantra is want what you have. Now what's out, not what's out there just beyond your reach. We can spend our lives telling ourselves, well, when I have that job or that spouse or that house or those children, then I can be happy. That means you are damning yourself to a hell of dissatisfaction in the meantime. This is particularly acute in virus isolation. What we thought we wanted was the lively world out there where we could visit any time we cared to, anywhere we wanted to go. If we wanted fried clams for dinner, we just cruise on by our favorite clam shack. The world was our oyster. Well, that world shrank in March to a few hundred square feet. And whatever happiness we could find had to be found either in those few hundred square feet or in the sounds and images that fed in from the internet, radio, and TV. That's what's on offer now to satisfy our wants. If we have wants that are unsatisfied with these reduced circumstances, we might need to readjust those wants. Now, I don't pretend that readjusting desires is easy. Desires operate on their own logic. I took control of my desires in one area of my life 16 years ago and decided to quit consuming alcohol. It was not easy, but one of the mantras I remember from AA was, think through the drink. So when the idea of having a drink took hold of me, I would discipline myself to think through what would happen if I had that drink, and then the second which would follow it, and to think what would I be like if I abandoned the life of sobriety on which I had embarked. I find myself going through a similar thought process today. I have a sweet tooth for a certain chocolate confection sold at one store 2 towns over from my home. That store is open for business and has curbside pickup, but it is very difficult to get this particular product through their ordering system. So I get tempted to just pop in there with my gloves and mask and make the purchase in 5 minutes and be out of there. But then I think, I'm almost 72 and in a pretty high-risk category and would be exposing myself to contagion which could permanently alter the course of my life and maybe cut short my years. For what benefit? For a few pieces of chocolate. Now the chocolate is heavenly, but not heavenly enough to go to heaven for. Want what you have. Put off the other stuff until the infection rates go down. The last part of Forrest's church's mantra is do what you can. A lot of us live with the laudable feeling that our purpose is to improve the world, to comfort the afflicted, and to afflict the comfortable. It seems such a waste of good energy and intelligence to sit idle in our homes. We should be out on the street protesting something. And some of us have protested, certainly Black Lives Matter recently. There's a lot of communication which can be done online, and plenty of social justice movers are finding that they can organize campaigns around subjects great and small, publicize them, raise funds for them, network and influence the course of change. But of course the opportunities are more restricted than with in-person activities. But dead people by and large do not change the world. You can use the time of enforced isolation to reflect on what fights are really worth fighting and resolve that you are going to wait out this virus and live. After your corona sabbatical, you will have a sharper idea about which direction you want to apply your energies. We liberals always have eyes that are bigger than our stomachs for social change. We're sensitive to and empathetic with a whole range of problems and want to do something about each of them. The Reverend Howard Thurman was Dean of Marsh Chapel at the Boston University School of Theology and a passionate advocate for civil rights. Once a student came to him with the question of how he was supposed to know which of the many social problems in the world needed his attention and energies the most. Thurman replied, "Find out what makes you come alive, and then go and do that. For what the world needs most is people who have come alive." You could not resolve all the problems in the world before the coronavirus hit, and you certainly can't solve them from social isolation, and you certainly can't solve anything if you die, and so you are left with doing what you can. And you can either accept that limitation and be happy with it, or rail against it and make yourself miserable. It is your choice. In general, we can be tortured by our limitations or live contented within them. If you can accept being who you are, wanting what you have, and doing what you can, you can tell your demons to crawl back into the nether world, or at least if they want to converse with you, they have to be nice about it. The Persian mystic poet Jalaluddin Rumi left us this great piece of wisdom called the guest house. Quote, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat every guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our closing words are from Ralph Waldo Emerson. A person will worship something. A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming. Blessed be. Amen. Go in peace.